You probably looked this up. So like maybe late at night when you're doom scrolling and you think no one's really paying attention. You're looking for visa requirements, Portugal, jobs available in Germany. What's the cost of living in the Netherlands? And then you probably closed your app because you felt like, oh my gosh, that's such a pipe dream. And you're wild for even considering. You're not crazy and you're not alone. The US government can track a citizen's bank account in the Netherlands in real time. They know exactly what you earn if you leave the borders. And they've built the most sophisticated financial surveillance system on Earth to follow American money wherever it goes. But they have no official count of how many Americans have left. They track your money anywhere on Earth. They just don't publicize how many of us went. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why and why other governments figured out what was happening with American workers a lot earlier than a lot of American workers did. Earlier this year, I posted 2 videos. One was about Denmark and one was about Finland. And both of those countries have government recruitment programs specifically targeting experienced US professionals. So they were looking for fast-track visas, relocation support, tax structures that were designed specifically to make financial decisions about this obvious for Americans. And both of those videos went viral. The comments weren't exactly what I expected. People didn't say, look, oh, interesting, or I've always wanted to live in Europe. They wanted to know exactly who they were looking for. Are they looking for engineers? What's the income requirement? Like, I'm a nurse. Would it work for me? These were real people who were all having these moments where they're wondering, what can I do next? They're pulling up the application pages right then as they're watching the video before it's even over. Someone commented that they'd already made the move. I left the US 6 months ago. We couldn't be happier. Someone else, someone who was working remotely for a Swiss headquartered company, described what the other side actually feels like. So she said, same work, normal hours, more flexibility, basically less prone to burnout. So this was the same job with a different sort of arrangement, right? Culturally. When people are clamoring for application information in the comments of an Instagram video, that's not wanderlust. That is showing you exactly where we are in the US job market. That's desperation. That's people who have run out of ideas and options of what to do, and they want a lifeline. They're recognizing now that options might exist somewhere else. Those videos are linked below, but what all this response told me is that these 2 stories of Denmark and Finland are part of a much bigger conversation, because it wasn't just those 2 countries. It was never really just those 2 countries. Here's what the supply of workers other countries are now recruiting actively actually looks like and how it got created. Burnout in the American workforce just hit a 6-year high, and fewer than half of American workers actually believe that their employer cares about their well-being. And the workers who actually showed up every day, well, a lot of them have been getting systematically pushed out through a playbook that we've covered on this channel before. The AI cover for layoffs, the push from full-time employees to contractor status. And then the one that doesn't make the headlines the way it should, which is the return to office mandates that even Fortune magazine has called layoffs in disguise. 1 in 4 C-suite executives admitted that they hoped that return to office policies would make people quit. So that's their strategy here. And then Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, recently said in a press conference that after adjusting for statistical overcounting, there is effectively 0 net job creation in the private sector. 0 net job creation in the private sector. And then he said something that should absolutely stop you cold, which is that labor force growth is, and I'm quoting him directly, non-existent really, which of course we've never had in our history. Never in our history. Not during the Great Recession, not during the dot-com crash, not during any downturn we have a name for. By the way, if you're finding this useful, hit subscribe, because what comes next is the part that nobody's talking about. So some people out there are calling this the Great Freeze, and the Federal Reserve Chair just confirmed that we are in economic territory without historical precedent, and it barely made a headline. The official unemployment number doesn't even capture the full picture either. It doesn't count the people who just stopped looking or the people who couldn't go back to the office who then couldn't go back and get unemployment because they failed to meet the good cause exception. So a lot of people are not included in that whole unemployment figure that frankly should be. So we're getting an incomplete picture of what's happening in the job and labor market from a system that seems remarkably incurious about the full count. Skilled, experienced Americans burnt out, pushed out, and frozen out of a job market that the Fed chair has said has never existed before in history. Other governments looked at that and they saw an opportunity. The country that they built careers in has decided that their experience wasn't really worth keeping, and other countries have noticed this. So Germany actually needs 400,000 skilled workers every single year just to keep its economy functioning. And in 2024, they wrote a new immigration law, which was built around something called the Opportunity Card, which they called a Chance-It Card, which I probably screwed up, Chance-It Card, a points-based visa that lets skilled workers move to Germany and look for a job after they arrive. So you usually have to actually have a job offer to get access to these countries. Not here in Germany. You just show up if you're qualified, and you have up to a year to find the right fit. And you can also do an unlimited number of trial opportunities with companies. So 2 weeks at a time before anyone commits to anything. So try before you buy 2 weeks at a time in Germany. They built a government portal for this, and it's called Make It in Germany. That's the actual name, Make It in Germany. That's not subtle. In the Netherlands, which is historically known to be a very tight labor market, they now have a program that's for highly skilled migrants, and it fast tracks qualified non-EU workers in 2 to 4 weeks. You don't have a requirement to prove that a Dutch person couldn't do the job first, which, people have feelings about. But then there's this other detail that made me read it twice. It's Dutch employers can actually provide up to 30% of a highly skilled migrant's salary completely tax-free for the first 5 years of employment. This is written into their national policy. The Dutch government actually subsidizes employment for those relocating to their country, right? It's in writing. They will pay you to come. They will help offset the cost of your move. They're going pretty hard at this in Canada. British Columbia actually launched a government campaign that had produced advertisements that were specifically targeting healthcare workers in Washington State, Oregon, and California. American states, by name, they were calling out, right, in a foreign government's recruitment budget. They put even a branded coffee truck outside Seattle hospitals with their messaging. The Medical Council of Canada saw a 718% jump in Americans verifying their credentials on its licensing portal in a 6-month period. That's not people Googling it, right? This is people actually putting their credentials into a portal to see if they are valid to work in Canada. So that's paperwork. I don't do paperwork unless I'm serious. I don't know about you. And then US-based Google searches for Canada tech jobs hit the absolute highest level it has in 20 years in February of 2025. So that's more than you saw after the 2016 or 2024 elections. And unlike every single previous spike, this one hasn't faded. Canada's next door. Canada's running ads in Seattle. Canada has a line item in its government budget specifically to recruit you. Germany, the Netherlands, and Canada are just some of the loudest countries around. So Australia, New Zealand, the UK, the list keeps going. All of them are looking for what American employers really decided to discard, which often is experienced workers. And all of them are reaching the same conclusion. Their loss is other countries' gain. And the next generation of excellence in many fields may not actually be built on American soil. Now enter Palantir, the company of the moment. In 2025, the U.S. government signed a nearly $10 billion deal with Palantir, a data surveillance company. Part of that contract built something called Immigration OS, a platform which was designed to provide, and I'm reading directly from the federal contract description on the government's own procurement website, near real-time visibility on people leaving the country. So it pulls from IRS records, passport records, social security files, license plate readers, and at least one senior administration official has reported a financial stake in the company that's running the system. The government built a real-time surveillance platform to track people leaving under enforcement. So it taxes Americans who leave voluntarily through one of the most aggressive citizenship-based tax systems on Earth, which is one of only 2 countries on Earth that does this, and the other is Eritrea. It requires foreign banks globally to report American account holders or they face federal penalties. And it does not publish a count of how many Americans chose to leave. Since the Eisenhower administration, the U.S. has not collected comprehensive data on voluntary citizen immigration. The infrastructure exists and the financial data exists, the real-time tracking exists, but that number, nope, no one's tracking it. I want to ask you, who benefits from that specific absence? The institutions whose labor practices the data would call into question. The narratives the number would actually undermine, and the system that functions more smoothly when you believe that you're the only one who ever closed a browser tab at 11 p.m. after looking up how to get out of the country to go to Portugal. The data that they're not sharing proves that you're not alone. The system is not broken. It's actually working exactly as it was designed. So the institutions are fine, the shareholders are fine, executive comp is at record highs. the casualties are the workers. And the system runs on the assumption that you're just too scared, too isolated, too busy blaming yourself to see that the outcome was never accidental. Nobody in those boardrooms is talking about what comes next. When you push out your most experienced workers, so when you create the conditions that actually force people into feeling like they have no choice but to start filling out applications to work in the Netherlands, you don't just lose an employee, you lose what they could have built, the institutional knowledge that they cannot transfer to a contractor, the innovation that only comes from people who have enough security around them as an employee to actually take intellectual risks. America's status as the global hub of innovation was never guaranteed. It was built by us. It was built by us, talented, experienced, committed people who believed that the arrangement of employment was worth it. And now they're starting to question that. If the talent drain continues, if the brightest minds keep opening that browser tab and this time actually fill out that form, the ultimate cost won't be paid by the workers who left. It'll be paid by the institutions that made leaving the rational choice. This is the whole career stability crisis, and it's not something that actually started with AI, and it won't end with the next quarterly earning reports. The only people who can change this whole equation are the ones who are going to see the system clearly enough to stop accepting its terms. None of us should have to depend on any one company or any one country saying yes to us. I'm going to put the links to all the country programs that I mentioned here in the description. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and we will get into more on the career stability crisis on the next video.